There are several thousand collisions involving trains each year, which result in over 1,000 injuries and several hundred deaths. A majority of these deaths occur when someone is struck by a train while trespassing on railroad property. Remember, railroad property is private property. Trespassing along railroad property is not only against the law, it's very dangerous. Avoid taking shortcuts. The only safe place to cross railroad tracks is at a designated crossing. Don't get caught dead on the tracks. Stay off, stay away, stay alive.
Visit Elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
Welcome to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, your host. As we enter May, we begin to look forward to Memorial Day. The 97th Elmhurst Memorial Day Parade will take place on Memorial Day at the end of the month. I have the co-chairs of that parade and the military ceremony which follows it, Ralph Paccianio and John Quigley, here with me tonight. Welcome, gentlemen, to Elmhurst Now.
Glad to be with you.
Thanks, Ken. Glad to be here.
How long have the two of you been working together on the parade?
John and I have been doing this since the year 2000 when John joined the chamber, and so this will be our 16th parade.
And you've been involved with it a little bit longer than that, Ralph?
Yes, I began an affiliation with the parade in 1992, and then after 1996, Bill Ralston and his wife Charlotte asked if I would please take the parade over from them. And I said, I'll do it on one condition, and that would be that the chamber would be my partner. So I went to A.J. Tachi Taronis, who we knew so well, and Tachi said, of course we can do that, and so that's how that got started. And then, of course, Tachi died in July of '99. So after some search, John took over that position, and we began an affiliation of doing the parade together.
Yeah, I like how he says we began an affiliation. One of my first days on the job in November '99, Ralph comes in, he sits down across from me and he goes, you know, one of your jobs as the chamber president is you co-chair the Memorial Day Parade. And I said, that's funny. Nobody said a word about that during the interview process.
Nobody mentioned that in the interview process, yeah.
But just knowing that Ralph was going to do the bulk of the work, I was happy to co-chair.
Collateral duties. Yeah. Now, as I mentioned, it's the 97th parade, so that dates back to 1918, which is the same year that the chamber was founded. So was the chamber involved, do you believe, with the first parade?
Yeah, Ralph had some research done over at the Elmhurst Historical Museum, and in early stories, aside from the American Legion and the city, there is note of a booster organization, a booster club, and that's actually the precursor to the Chamber of Commerce. In 1918, a downtown businessmen's club, quote-unquote booster club, was established, and it stayed as that kind of booster club, businessmen's club, until the mid-30s when it actually became a Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Okay.
So the two of you work together, you plan the parade. When do you start? When does the parade planning begin in earnest? And I've heard the stories about, you know, the minute the parade ends, the parade planning begins, but it's probably not quite as dramatic as that.
Well, it's not dramatic, but we wrap up the prior parade. I get everything in order so that when the time comes later in the year, we can really begin our planning. We have to go through some application processes with the city, and so that's done in November typically. And then shortly after the 1st of January, I'll go into the chamber office and get the first applications together and do our first mailing to all the past participants. And since I've been involved in it, if I don't do that by the middle of January, we're already getting calls and questions from people who look forward to the parade. So I try not to send it out before the 15th of January because then they would want it even earlier.
Well, my impression, without knowing for sure, and I mean, I know there's a great number of Memorial Day parades in the area, but 97 has got to put us in pretty good standing in terms of longevity.
Well, I would think so. You know, the first parade was May 30th, 1919, and it started as a march from Field School to the Elm Lawn Cemetery by the youngsters at Field School and scouting groups, and of course veterans. I was showing John the newspaper articles that we were looking at. They talk about Spanish-American War veterans and that ilk, and of course the veterans of the big war, World War I.
Absolutely. Now, was there always a military ceremony associated with the parade?
Yes. As I said, they did a march to the cemetery, then following that march or that parade, then they would hold a service. And that service continued on. The first record that we could find of a service at Wilder Park was 1929.
1929, so approximately 10 years
Yes.
after the parade began.
And out of those early records, the speech was typically done by a local pastor or reverend. There is one situation where a U.S. senator was the keynote speaker at the event.
To your knowledge, are there Memorial Day parades that predate 1918?
I would not think so. They talk about in the newspaper article about the 1919 event, they talk about going to Chicago following that event for their parade.
Okay.
So I would think that the 1919 would mark the first parades.
Who sponsors the parade in Elmhurst?
The city of Elmhurst is a longtime sponsor of the parade. They have, as we like to say, outsourced that to the chamber, and we do all the legwork for the city. They provide a grant to us, and then we do it on behalf of the veterans organizations and the chamber.
Yeah, in our case, in some communities, the municipality actively runs the festival or the parades. They might have an office at City Hall that does it. Elmhurst has always kind of followed the procedure that if somebody's willing to organize it and put it together, they'll provide police, fire, public works. They'll provide usually some funding to do the parade. So as part of the application process that we go through prior to the end of a year leading into the next year's parade, we also have to apply for the community grant program to be able to get funding to pay for some of our entries. But all of the funding we get goes directly into the parade expenses. Ralph is in our office 3 times a week for months. That's all volunteer time. And everything the chamber does in terms of staff time, that's all volunteer as well. We just give that as part of our contribution to running the parade.
Well, Ralph, you mentioned the entry process a few moments ago. On an average year, how many entries will there be in the Memorial Day Parade?
Typically, we'll have between 80 and 90. I've had as many as 103. That's the highest number I've ever had.
Do they fall in specific categories? I mean, I know from doing the parade for our Elmhurst Arcana Town, I know there's brownies and Boy Scouts and whatnot all over the place. But what kind of entries typically, how do they break out?
When we, after we get the parade lineup put together, John usually does a calculation, and when he writes his section for our parade article, he will indicate how many color guards, how many bands, how many scout troops, how many civic organizations, and we have, as I said, between 80 and 90 typically, and we have civic organizations, we have representatives of the city, we have fire, police, military vehicles, all the various military organizations. We try to get involved, whether it's Coast Guard Auxiliary, Sea Scouts, ROTC units, that type of thing.
Now, I was thinking about, once again, going back to the very earliest parades, and Certainly after the Great War, the World War I veterans would have been in significant numbers, but did some calculations. There certainly were Civil War vets that marched in those first few parades, because if you were 25 at the end of the Civil War, you were in your late 70s in 1919. So there certainly were probably Confederates and Yankees in that, possibly in that first couple parades.
Well, it's very possible, although the first record I looked at, they called out Spanish American veterans, for example,
Okay.
but they didn't indicate Civil War veterans. But you know, they didn't have the longevity that we have now.
Well,
so there may not have been very many around at that time.
Going through the information that I saw, there was a mention that there was one left from the Civil War who would be participating in the parade. And now Ralph and I are in a position where we didn't see the last of the, actually we've seen the last of the World War I vets.
Yes,
right.
And now even our World War II vets are narrowing down to far less than what we had even just 10 years ago.
Now I know there's a Grand Marshal each year, and how is that selected?
Well, we have a parade committee. John and I typically will make a recommendation to the committee. We'll ask for nominations. Would you like to know who this year's parade?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would love to know.
All right. Okay. We just recently made the announcement that Jerry E. Pask, who you may know, who's a landscape architect and planner for the Park District. A lot of people don't know this, but Jerry, at the age of 18, joined the Army during the Vietnam War. He hoped to be a photographer. He wound up being a medic, and he spent 18 months doing flying on helicopters, doing rescue missions in Vietnam. So we were very pleased to that Jerry would accept our nomination to be this year's Parade Grand Marshal, and particularly since Jerry is retiring from the Park District this year. He was elated to be doing this.
It'd be a great honor for him and his community.
And he's actually a parade committee member and has worked on the parade on behalf of the Elmhurst Park District for quite some time.
Yes, and he's been a member of our Elmhurst Veterans Memorial Commission since '08.
Now I know the current path of the parade starts downtown and proceeds down Robert Palmer Drive and then goes on to Church Street and then turns north on Prospect past the reviewing stand in Wilder Park. Now, that's not the only route this parade has ever had, though.
No. No, as we were saying, the original parade started with marches from Field School or Hawthorne School up to Elm Lawn and up to Arlington Cemetery, and which was quite a little trek if you think about it. And then I saw other references when they moved the service to Wilder Park that they would start out on North Avenue and make their way down York Road to Virginia and Virginia over to Wilder Park to a memorial that was there for the service.
Yeah, and that, of course, before the underpass, they would have taken their chances with the trains.
Well, yeah, we have some stories about that.
We've tried that a couple times.
Well, yes, once was a great success. Tachi was very big on big ideas. So he said when we had our 80th parade that we should have the parade go down the traditional route of York Street and not take the underpass. So we were able to coerce the railroad into stopping the trains for us. And it was a great success, and we were real pleased with it. The following year, Tachi said, well, that worked so well, let's do it again. So we wrote letters, we made phone calls, and we couldn't get to the right people. And they said, well, at this particular time, it was, it's a holiday, you probably won't have any trouble. But we tried it again, and we had one train after another. But fortunately, the people who were particularly on the north side of the tracks enjoyed the parade, stopped in front of them. They got to listen to a lot of music.
Yeah, that would have been one great delay in the coverage of the parade, I would think.
And I'm proud to say, during my tenure as a parade co-chair, that has never happened.
That's right. Take that underpass every single time. Every single time. What did that breakdown look like last year, John, in terms of makeup of the parade, just off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, normally we're about a dozen. We're 10 to 14 scouting units, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts. Ralph has always asked them to carry the banners that commemorate each of the conflicts that outline the number of wounded, killed, how long the conflict took place. We usually have between 10 and 14 live performing bands. York Community High School, Elmhurst College Jazz Band, the community, the middle school community band all play.
Timothy
Christian's band plays.
Sure.
But then to get other bands, you do have to pay. And that's one of the things the city sponsorship goes towards. And Ralph's been really good at being able to get in some solid entries. And we usually have one or maybe two changing over every year. But we've had some long-term
We have a new one this
participants.
year, and we're going to have a group from Marshall, Missouri. Marshall's Marching Owls.
The Marching Owls.
Yes, that'll be interesting.
All right.
So we can assume we're one of several parades they're
the
going to try.
Marching Owls are going to
They're
be
trying to
right. I think
participate in, because there are parades going on in the afternoon on Memorial Day, or even later in the morning from the ones we do taking place in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And then, for example, there's fire units from multiple communities
Right.
that love to come and participate in the parade, and that's somewhat unusual because usually when you get fire trucks and police trucks and ambulances, you expect the sirens to be going and those kinds of things as they do with the St. Patrick's Day parade or an Independence Day parade. But part of our parade, part of Always Remember, is also being cognizant of who you're really paying tribute to, those that gave their lives. And so Ralph has always asked that, if there's music being played, that it's patriotic and that you don't blare sirens and those kinds of things.
Traditional quiet parade.
Yeah, it becomes it's out of respect and a somber tone, and yet at the same time,
Right.
it's Memorial Day.
That's right.
And people are out, particularly if it's
It's a
good weather.
joyful remembrance.
Joyful remembrance. I think that's a careful distinction to make as we talk about a parade that has as its theme the whole notion of recognizing service and understanding about sacrifice.
That's correct.
But the veterans groups themselves are on the committee, I would guess, and certainly involved.
Oh yes, particularly the American Legion. The American Legion historically did a lot in organizing the Memorial Day parade. For some years, the VFW and the Legion would alternate each year organizing the parade. The VFW, as you know, we no longer have a VFW unit in Elmhurst,
Right.
And they merged into the Villa Park group, and we still include the VFW in our parade, and we're very respectful and cognizant of the contribution that the VFW has made to Elmhurst.
Well, I think that the two of you would certainly agree that the parade, its 97-year standing, makes it an obvious icon of the community. But the parade itself and what it stands for is so typically Elmhurst and the kinds of things that the city is also known for. There's a lot of strong historical extended tenures in this city.
Yeah, certainly, I've seen parades come and go. I've told this story before. When I was a little leaguer in town, we used to regularly have to wear our wool uniforms, and we'd march in the Independence Day parade, 4th of July parade, and other parades, including in some cases the Memorial Day parade. And so from my youth, there was you're either marching in it or you're on the sidelines cheering those marching in it.
Right.
And in some cases you march in it and then you go to the sidelines and cheer the people marching in it.
Yeah, and you probably remember for some time the 4th of July parade was the larger parade in the community.
Right.
And then that changed, and I'm pleased to say that since the Chamber got involved with the Memorial Day Parade, we have made it a very significant event, and we're so pleased to be able to do that.
At that point, we're going to take a break, gentlemen, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the history and a little bit more about the parade that's coming up in just a few weeks. This is Elmhurst Now. We'll be right back.
The Elmhurst Historical Museum, located in downtown Elmhurst, is proud to present award-winning exhibits for visitors of all ages. Our Adult Tea Time Talk series, family programs, and special events make learning about history interesting and fun. Admission is free, and on-site parking is available. Visit the Elmhurst Historical Museum soon. Call us today, or go to our website for the latest program details.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Now. I'm talking with Ralph Piccianio and John Quigley, the co-chairs of the Elmhurst Memorial Day Parade. And gentlemen, going back to the Elmhurst loves its parades. I mean, the Memorial Day Parade, Pet Parade, there was an Independence Day Parade for a goodly number of years, and of course the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which just happened a little while ago. What is it about parades in this town?
I think it's just the typical, everyone loves a parade. It's a chance for everyone to get out. There's no class distinctions. It doesn't cost you to attend one, and it's a good time, and it's a good family event.
I'm coming up on 20 years broadcasting the Memorial Day Parade, and I have to say every single year I'm struck by the fact that people watching the parade and people in the parade, the varied ages, the kids in the parade, some are so young they don't know they're in the parade. They're just walking down the street, or they're in a street. They're not supposed to normally be in one. It's just the whole Americana feature, I guess.
Yeah, I can tell you this, during the times I've been involved as co-chair, as I've walked the parade route, every year I see more men and women proudly wearing their military gear. And I think there was a while where they kind of put their military service in the closet, and they might come out for the parade, but they weren't wearing their Marine hat, or they weren't wearing their Vietnam camo. And now when you walk the parade, it's as much for the people marching in the parade to see the people watching the parade. Because there's veterans of all ages on both sides of the parade route as you march along.
Yeah, I think that really has changed since 9/11. There's been such an emphasis upon patriotism and recognition of those who have served.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. There's been not so much a reinvigorated patriotism as an improved self-awareness.
Yes.
And recognition of the military for being what it is and why it is, and the sacrifices that are most definitely involved. I want to switch gears a little bit from the parade to the military ceremony, which for folks that haven't been to the Elmhurst Memorial Day Parade, immediately following the parade in Wilder Park in the Veterans Memorial area, there is a rather compelling and moving military remembrance ceremony. But before we go to the ceremony, Ralph, I know you were greatly involved as the spearhead, if you will, for the Veterans Memorial in Wilder Park itself. And I wonder if you might just sort of give us a quick recap about how that happened.
That's really quite a story. In 1992, it happened to be my turn to be the president of the Elmhurst Chamber. I've been involved in the Chamber since 1970. I'd served on the board for years and years and been treasurer many, many times. And finally, through the chair system, it got to be my turn in 1992. Well, at that point, shortly after the first of the year of '92, Tachi came to me and he said, Ralph, we have a letter here from the veterans, and it was just a blind letter addressed to the president of the chamber, and they're asking if we would meet with them and assist them with trying to raise funds for an appropriate veterans memorial in Wilder Park. So Tachi and I discussed it for a minute, and we said, sure, well, let's give that a try. I had a motto of challenges, solutions, and success as my motto. Tachi insisted I have a thought big and have a motto for my year. And so I said, well, that fits into this.
Absolutely.
So that's what we did. We met over at the Legion Hall. We had lunch with Bill Ralston and Lyle Johnson, if you remember Lyle from the VFW, and Don Kempf, who is still with us, fortunately, and some other veterans who were part of what they had as a committee to build this memorial. So we agreed that I would take on the role as chairman of the fundraising committee. And I immediately went home and I started drafting letters and preparing short remarks and scheduling meetings. And every chamber event that we had, I would get up and I would tout why we needed this memorial, and I would bring out Bill Ralston and Lyle Johnson, and then later we would bring out a display that they had built. And we took what they put in $5,000 of seed money 5 years prior to that, and that money was all gone. So they went backwards instead of forwards. So from January of '92 until Veterans Day of '92, we raised well over $100,000. We got the city and the park district on board, which was not easy, but we did. We got the site in Wilder Park. We had a groundbreaking service on Veterans Day of '92, and I was able to speak there and thank everybody for what they had done, and it was really heartfelt. I meant that because it wasn't a one-person deal. Everyone got behind it, and everyone was so cooperative that it was just a wonderful event. And then in May of '93, we dedicated the memorial, and I got to give another speech thanking everybody. And so I have given a short talk, if not a longer one, at every Veterans Day and Memorial Day service since then.
Well, I think like so many things in Elmhurst, it's hard to envision Wilder Park without the Veterans Memorial in it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And there are certainly other icons as well, but the memorial itself, with its very stately, the stones and the flags, and it has a presence. When you're there, you are in a very special place.
It's a testament to the city of Elmhurst and to the Chamber of Commerce. The chamber, all the chamber businesses, we couldn't have not done that without that connection. Yeah. And that's where the veterans didn't have that. Yeah. They had well intentions, but they needed someone to connect their story with the community.
The Veterans Memorial and then the 9/11 Memorial on Spring Road, there's similar feelings. They're entirely different places, but there's similar feelings. Now the ceremony itself, the parade is over. Obviously a strong gathering of folks gather around the memorial. John, can you take us through how the ceremony generally goes?
Well, when we first started working together, Bill Ralston was the master of ceremonies. He's given way on that. So Bill Shanklin's been doing that for a number of years now, does a great job. He's kind of brought the ceremony into a more modern era, so to speak. While we still want to be staid and respectful, we also want it to be engaging. We want as much participation from the audience as we can get. And so aside from the typical kind of recognition of each of the military branches and placing of wreaths by the military branches, by the mayor, having the Grand Marshal speak at the event, having the names of the deceased from our last gathering, which would have been Veterans Day from the year before, having those names read. The musical side of the event has become much more powerful. Mm-hmm. And I wish people wouldn't just pack up and go. We get a nice crowd, but it's a military-based crowd. They have relatives, their families, that kind of thing. And I really wish some more of the people would stop on by, because the few people I know that have said, I think I'll see it this year, afterwards they've gone, wow, that was really good. I'm going to come to this every year.
Yeah. Yeah, we do it up very nicely. As John was saying, Bill Shanklin has put a real emphasis upon music. The service opens with color guards and posting of the flags, and during the program we fire a cannon. We do it upright. We have a 21-gun salute. It's got a very good military flavor to it. We recognize each branch of the service, and it goes over very well.
Now, I have to say, both parades and military ceremonies are outside events, and we're at the end of May. Any significant weather stories? Has the parade ever been canceled, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. Since I've been involved, we only had one time where we had a delay in the start of the parade, and that was due to thunderstorms. Then as soon as the police said it was safe, we then began the parade, perhaps after a half-hour delay. We have had rain fall upon us at the memorial, at the service following the parade. We've not had rain on the parade, but we've had a couple significant rainfalls. In fact, the year that Bill Ralston was honored, and it's just ironic, we had a terrible rainstorm, and Bill never lived it down.
I vividly recall, and perhaps that was the year, but I vividly recall the 21-gun salute being followed by this massive thunderbolt.
Yes.
That sent everybody flying,
right.
And then the rains just came down, and everyone
and
just
we
sort
stood
of
there.
Right. Everyone just sort of stood there and took it, and it passed, and then everybody continued on as if it hadn't happened. But I wasn't sure whether the parade itself had ever encountered a direct hit like that.
Well,
so
not since '92. I can't go back farther than that on a personal level.
Yeah, it's not that significant. So coming up on 100 years. I mean, 97,
Right.
Not too many years before we hit that triple digit. What do you think year 100 is going to have in store for it? We got a few years to prepare, but that's going to be pretty special.
Well, John and I have joked about that for several years, that we're going to at least get this through the 100th. And
Okay.
we anticipate doing that, and we'll put our heads together. We'll see what we can do to try to make that an even more special event.
I think the theme itself of the parade, Always Remember, for me, it conjures up specific people and specific things, and in some cases, specific military personnel. Do the two of you, when you hear that phrase, or as you're working on the parade, or the day itself, are there specific individuals that you think about, that you've met over the years or encountered?
Certainly, we've had a number of very fine military people who have been involved in the parade. I like to think of it more, though, of everyone has in their background a father, or perhaps even a mother, a brother, or even a sister who has been in the military. A lot of families have been touched by having lost somebody during service. And I just think that there are just so many stories like that. It touches virtually every family in Elmhurst, and I think that's why Memorial Day is such a significant day. Perhaps John can amplify on that.
Well, certainly, since Ralph was kind enough to allow me to take over the reading of the deceased veterans when I joined him, every year I can tell you there are names on that list that I am good friends with. And on occasion, there's a name on the list of somebody I hadn't talked to in a long time, or even thought they were still in the area. And so that's when it really comes back and hits me as I read that. And I try and relate a story regarding that. In some cases, it's been my own relatives. In other cases, it's been other people's stories that I try and relate prior to reading those names. In the research that we were given from the Historical Museum, the original parades had a spot for the Gold Star Mothers. And there were 8 names of boys who had lost their lives in World War I, and their mothers were going to participate in the parade. And I can tell you that if 3 of those last names are who I think they are from Elmhurst, I knew their relatives. I might have known their great uncle, or somewhere down the line. I knew those names, and over the course of the year, you see those names, you get familiar with them. When I had to read Bill Ralston's name, it wasn't a name when I first started doing this, I never envisioned myself reading that name, and then I'm reading it. And I know in the next years to come that there are more people who I have had long relationships with whose names I'm going to be reading.
Yeah, and I think that speaks again a little bit to the conversation we had earlier about the revisited or refound respect for the military, or a higher degree, or a more public patriotism era that we're in right now. The honor flights that have been going on now for several years with World War II veterans, and as you also mentioned earlier, as we near the end of having World War II veterans with us, there's talk obviously now of honor flights for Korean War veterans and this kind of thing, and even that kind of touches on the always remember. And I'm quite certain that both of you know people who have gone on those honor flights.
Yes. I know at least a dozen who've gone on the flights.
Right.
And love them. I've run into people while traveling who were military people, and I started up a conversation, and they thank me for running a Memorial Day parade and being involved in a Veterans Day ceremony in my hometown. And I said, no, this isn't about me. Right. It's about you guys.
Right.
And the last time I was out in Phoenix, I was having lunch, and there's a military base out there, and 8 of the military people came in. They sat down, and I was finishing my lunch, and I called the waitress over, and I said, would you give me their bill? I'll pay their bill. And she said, well, actually, another guest has asked to pay their bill. So do you guys just want to split it? And I said, yeah, that's fine with me. And we did that. And as I walked out, I just said, I run a Memorial Day parade in my hometown, and I didn't get to serve, and I appreciate your service. Thanks a lot. And they were most grateful. Ralph's a veteran. My brother spent 2 tours in Vietnam. My brother-in-law fought in Korea. My uncle flew bombing missions over Germany. I was the last draft class for Vietnam. So even if I had gotten drafted, if my number had come up, it was unlikely I was going to end up in Vietnam. So close, but not there, but understand what it was for those people who were there.
What does the term service mean to the two of you? The word service. What immediately comes to mind?
Selflessness.
Ralph?
Be putting others ahead of yourself.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the history of the Memorial Day Parade in Elmhurst is completely covered by the term service, and both of your service, if you will, to this great parade and this great holiday in our midst. And I thank you for joining me tonight on Elmhurst Now as we look forward to the 97th Memorial Day Parade on
May the 25th,
at
9:30.
9:30,
Third and
stepping
York.
off from 3rd and York,
Right.
following Robert Palmer Drive all the way to Wilder Park as we went through it
Right.
a little bit earlier. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ken.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
This has been Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, and we'll see you at the Memorial Day Parade.
We live in some of the best communities in Illinois. We care about our neighbors. We work hard to preserve our quality of life. But there's something we forget about in Elmhurst. A river runs through it, and it's up to us to protect it. Our storm drains flow to Salt Creek, and that means our harmful waste does too. So try using fewer chemicals on your lawn. Avoid leaking fluids from cars. And grow native flowers and plants to absorb more rainwater. Don't muddy the waters. Do your part to clean up Salt Creek.
Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.